Hey guys, welcome to another Zelda Breath of the Wild update discussion. I'm your host, Andre Seegers, and this time we're joined by Derek Binder to discuss all the Zelda updates from the past week. So let's get started. Alright Derek, so when we first started these, we didn't know they were going to be weekly or bi-weekly, but it seems like we may be settling into maybe a weekly discussion, at least this time, because Nintendo posted a couple images, and really now's the time to talk about them, because for one, there's some big stuff here to discuss, or somewhat big stuff, and two, we basically have to talk about them this week, because of course next week is a Switch presentation, meaning we're going to have even bigger stuff to be talking about next week. And we probably won't have time for the specific image discussion.
Yeah, unless they show something really big, I kind of doubt it's going to be a main focus of us because, more than likely we're going to have a new trailer, there's going to be new stuff to look at, there's going to be who knows how much footage because of these events that they're going to have. Right. Who knows what they're going to have you do if there's a Zelda demo, which I'm going to assume there is. So, there's just not going to be enough time next week to discuss any new images, if even any come out, because these aren't exactly as consistent as the Smash ones. It's not every day. It's just like, we feel like right. Tossing out some artwork for you. Here you go.
Yeah, it's a little bit more arbitrary this time, unfortunately. So, but yeah, there is some big stuff here, and it's kind of funny because we were going to record this about an hour ago, but then in preparation for this, we start looking into a few more things about these images, and we're like, man, there's even more to talk about here than we first thought. So I want to make sure we had our ducks in a row before we, leapt into things here.
Well, obviously the ducks aren't in a row, Andre. Look at this image. There's a duck clearly not in line with everybody else. That is you.
Oh, that's a good point. You're right. And there's actually 2 rows of ducks there, so twice the amount of work. Yeah, so let's just get into things here, obviously. So we're talking about the artwork that Nintendo posted, or first up, of course, is the artwork Nintendo posted on the New Year. In fact, their little description is Happy New Year. And what's really cool about this is, as we're looking forward to the new year, this artwork is, of course, a clear callback to the original artwork for the, for the first original Legend of Zelda on the NES. It's not even questionable. Like, it's a very clear connection where we see Link and both of them looking, standing on the edge of a cliff, looking out upon the vast landscape of Hyrule with some mountains in the background. Now, the main difference here, though, is while the mountains seem to be pretty generic in the original game, they could be, I guess, Death Mountain, maybe. There were, everything was a lot vaguer back in those days.
Yeah, exactly.
This time, it's very clearly Death Mountain. But what's interesting here is, at E3, they also made this connection with the original artwork, where when Link exits the Shrine of Resurrection, they stand out on the cliff and look out upon the landscape, and they even brought up that original image in the stream, and we're like, yeah, we were inspired by this. It seems like that artwork served as partial inspiration for this game, especially because those 2 mountains in the center there, the original artwork, they mentioned directly influenced the Twin Peaks we see in Breath of the Wild. So it's kind of interesting, though, that in the new artwork, we're clearly looking at Death Mountain and not at the Twin Peaks. So it's weird to see these multiple levels of things inspiring each other.
Yeah, a little bit. Although I will say it makes much more sense to look at Death Mountain rather than the Twin Peaks.
Oh, it totally
Death Mountain
does.
has become this, when you're thinking of a mountain in Zelda, it's going to be Death Mountain. And plus, it just so much more naturally works together. And I don't know. I like this. I really like this homage. Like, everybody knew, of course, that they were inspired by the original. They made that very clear at E3. But to have new artwork as a direct homage, I don't know, almost makes it kind of cooler. Like, it's kind of cool that they made it possible to do that in-game, but to have the artwork of it and to see it updated like this, it's just so cool. And you can really see just how much the series has evolved because, you look at the original, it's just, plain mountains, plain trees, a plain river. There's not really anything definite. It's just a vastness. And you can see that it's not quite as...
or definite. Get it?
But you can actually see things that are inhabiting this world, unlike the original. There's actually things to go and explore.
Well, yeah, that's the crazy thing. The original artwork was abstract. This is real. Everything you see here, you can literally go walk to and check out for yourself. Like, this artwork is just an artistic take on basically what is an actual view in the game.
While there's not a lot to say about this picture, other than the fact that it really does match up with something you could totally see in the game, I still appreciate that they took that extra mile and seeing what you can do. And honestly, there's a lot of great artwork, like the one of Link carrying all the different equipment that he has. Mm-hmm. I'd love to see an updated version of that. That's always been one of my favorites, when you can just pick out all the different items that Link could pick up, and there he happens to have it on us. This is how he carries all this crap. Let's do that for Breath of the Wild.
Well, speaking of which, actually, it's kind of interesting in that, Link has typically been left-handed, yet in the original Zelda artwork here and in Breath of the Wild, he's right-handed in each, which is kind of an interesting connection just given the series' history of Link, generally being left-handed. So it's just funny how these two do work that well together, because I went back and looked at other artwork for the original Legend of Zelda, and he seems to be right-handed in most of them. It seems to be more, I think, in the sequel that they've started focusing more on the left-handed aspect.
That could be. I mean, it's also possible that hold the scabbard in his right hand, pull the sword out with his left, and then use it there. Although in Breath of the Wild, we do know that he is right-handed there.
Right.
So it really is just an intention to match up with the original artwork, which makes sense.
I just really want to stress how awesome. I just love everything about this artwork. Not just the fact that it's a callback, which is great. Well, actually, okay. So related to that, the original artwork, looking at it, it inspires a sense of adventure. You look at that, it's like, hell yeah, I want to go see what's out there in that world. Look at that. You have the whole world laid out in front of you. I want to go see what's out there. And the timing's actually perfect. Actually, I think this artwork partially inspired me, because I went back and just a few days ago and started replaying the original Legend of Zelda. I've never played it all the way through, and now I'm up to the 5th temple. Even though I've already found the 7th and 8th ones as well. But I'm officially on the 5th temple, and I just love the sense of adventure the original artwork inspired, and now we're getting the exact same inspiration, but on a far grander scale in Breath of the Wild. Again, though, in this case, it's not abstract. This is real. You can walk to Death Mountain, those peaks there, everything here is legit. I love it. I love everything about this. I'm so stoked for this game. And I love also, again, the inspiration they're taking from the original game. It's kind of like, if they were to make the original Legend of Zelda today, that is Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is. Obviously, adding in a few new touches in here. But you're right about the sense of adventure. I like the added touch of sort of the fog clouds that's amongst the trees and the lower portions of Death Mountain to really emphasize that sense of mystery. It's oh, there's stuff hidden under there. I want to go see that. Other than the fact that, there's stuff out there. Let's go explore.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, this artwork just makes me really jazzed for this game. I mean, it's just beautiful. And as you mentioned, you can even see the the towers there. Just everything about it. I love it. So good.
Well, does the second bit of artwork we got this week make you just as excited?
It does in different ways. This one's interesting because there was no description at all posted with it. Nintendo just threw it out there on January 4th, and at first it seems to show the same horse building that we talked about in our trailer. I actually did a little mini analysis on this, but because it looked just like the same building, I basically wrote off as being literally the same building. As it turns out, though, it's not. First off, is the fact that this one is taken from almost an exact opposite perspective of that other image. So I just assumed it was the same building or same location. But it's not, because in the original trailer, you can see there's a mountain right behind that building. Whereas we can see there's no mountain nearly as close in this image. So what that means is this is basically a whole different location. And not only that, but I have to give credit to Michael Mansfield in the Facebook comments, who may have found where in the world this is, because he noticed that the mountain's right behind the horse here, on the left here. You can see in the overworld just east of Death Mountain. Now, it's impossible to say whether they're literally the exact same mountains, because the perspective's different and the angles are different. You can't say for sure. But I went and looked through it, and sure enough, those mountains do look similar, which means that this location may be taking place a little bit infield to the northeast a little bit. So between Death Mountain and the Twin Peaks, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically where we spent most of our time trying to figure this out. One, to see if they were the same, and then we saw this comment. It was like, okay, is he right about the location? And sure enough, we found the pillars and the other mountain beside it, and it could be scrunched in there. The pictures we looked at of those areas are vague enough that you could easily put something in there. So it's very possible that this is in there. We can't say for sure, of course, but all the evidence kind of points in that direction. And you're right. We were looking at the other artwork of it, or from the trailer, and it is the complete exact opposite. You could almost say, where is this? Because it just happens to be the other side of the building. But it does seem to be different from what we saw before.
And it should be noted, too, that we actually found the original horse building in the trailer. We found where exactly in the world that was, and it was just roughly northwest of the plateau, a short ways northwest. So this one's quite a bit further. This location is accurate. So the question then is, And first off, I want to mention there are bigger things we could be talking about here, but we'll get to that soon. That's actually why I didn't focus too much on the location originally, because there's something actually much more interesting in this picture I want to get to. But before we do that, the question then is, if there's multiple of these horse buildings in the world, what does that mean? Like, why are there multiple of this very distinctive structure?
I mean, the best I can say is that they're outposts, item shops, places that you can get stuff, and we see a stable here. Maybe you can take care of your horse in some way, or rent other horses, or do something else with it. But there has to be, like, it has to be a series of outposts where you can get some kind of supplies. There's a campfire out front. Maybe you can get cooking supplies, and rather than have to live off the land. There's a lot of possibilities that comes with just a series of outposts.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about this, right? This is all, like, as far as we can tell, these are always by themselves, like out in the middle of nowhere. Like, they really do seem to cater to travelers, which makes sense. You know, we've seen people carrying stuff with them, going around these buildings. We see the horse stable, as you mentioned. So do you think it's possible you can rent horses here, or borrow horses, or steal horses? or is that really just like a place where travelers can, park their horses?
I want to say just park your horses, because what's the point of buying a horse if you can just tame a wild one?
Well, we all know how often you'll come across wild horses.
That's a good point. So you might, maybe early on or something like that, or you're just having trouble, you can just buy your way out of it. But money's also seems to be a little bit more rare this time around, so who knows how that aspect all works.
But it is kind of interesting that this building is so horse-focused. You have the giant, of course, the giant structure on top. There, those things on the left there, Derek, I mentioned the Game Awards footage too, but those look like statues of horses by one of the entrances. And then on those murals are more horses.
Yeah, this is definitely all horse focused. This is this is some sort of horse society going on right now, or something related to this, or like the guy who runs the place is going to look like a horse. Who knows?
Wouldn't that be something?
You know how that goes with Zelda and the way character designs go. Actually, I just had a thought. I wonder if it might be just a smaller version of the bazaar from Skyward Sword.
I mean, it could be. The general shape of the building is actually kind of similar too. How that was like a tent-like structure. So that would make sense if there are like multiple bazaars basically around the world. I mean, especially in this game, like, you don't want to be going back to the same location over and over and over, but that's a pain in the ass in a world as big as this one. So that would make sense for this to function as a general bazaar where you can, trade wares with people. Maybe the people, maybe even the wares change. And getting to that point, let's just get to the elephant in the room here. So the guy there in the bottom left carrying the giant bag, we were wondering initially what's his deal, and then all of us worked together to figure it out. And I actually posted our chat script transcript in our previous video, or rather in the comments of the previous video, but we narrowed it down to the fact that he is pretty clearly Beedle. We're 99% sure that guy is Beedle, because as Ash pointed out, his backpack is Beedle shaped. You can see like the horns on it, and then you can see the lines or the ropes holding it together might be the wings, where the wings pop out. And then you remember the fact that, hey, there's a guy literally called Beedle in the games, and sure enough, this guy's like general appearance straight up matches Beedle perfectly. Like, the hair is same color, he's wearing the same blue shorts, he's got the same like sandal like shoes. You can see a part of his nose even as well, I believe. So very clearly Beedle. Yeah. And he was of course a merchant in those games as well, traveling the world, or especially in Wind Waker where he traveled the world, you can buy stuff from him.
Yeah, I mean, we said that and all clicked together. We're like, yeah, this has to be Beedle. Just all the little elements started falling into place, and it made a lot of sense. Especially for him to be just a traveling merchant, because that's always been his lot in life. What's very interesting here is now he's actually carrying his bag along. He doesn't have a boat. He doesn't have an airship or anything like that. He's hoofing it, and he has quite the bag, that's for sure.
Actually, he's not hoofing it, Derek. He doesn't have a horse. God.
God. But yeah, it's very clearly Beedle, and that's kind of big in and of itself. That's our first named character in this game. We've only really seen, Link the Old Man and maybe Zelda.
Right.
But in, the references to Ganon. But, seeing a returning character from other games. I don't know. For some reason, I didn't even think about that. It's like, oh yeah, all of our staples. We haven't seen any of them yet. Does this mean we might see, I don't know, Malin and Talon? Will we see Tingle in this? Who knows who we'll see?
I kind of hope we don't see Tingle. It is kind of interesting, though, how he only appears so far in the more cartoonish versions of the game, I guess, like Skyward Sword, Wind Waker, and he also appeared in Spirit Tracks, Phantom Hourglass, and I believe Minish Cap. Those all had a more cartoony art style, and while Breath of the Wild isn't as quite as cartoony as those, like it still shares some of that like cell shaded look as compared to like Twilight Princess.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, that's just sort of his thing, I guess. Is like, if we can't make this guy look too realistic, he'll look weird, kind of like. Well, kind of like Tingle would look really weird if it made him look realistic.
Right. We threw out the idea that this could be a bazaar earlier, but how does that work with Beedle, though? Because we see him seemingly like walking to it, or he could just be hanging around here too. Is he like one of the merchants here? I mean, do you think he travels the world, or does he? I mean, well, he must, because he's got that backpack, so he must be getting around. He also has a sleeping bag too, by the way. So do you think he sets up shop temporarily at these bazaars, maybe? Or is this just like a place, or does he just appear around bazaars at random? I mean,
I think he's a traveling merchant, to be honest. I don't see him settling down at the bazaar. I mean, it could be.
Well, again, that's assuming it's a bazaar. It may not be. This could just be a gathering place.
Yeah, at this gathering place or whatever. He might just show up. He might just be able to be like, hey, fancy meeting you here. I hope that, I made it my way here and just happened to be here at the same time as you. Or now we have the Beedle brothers or something like that. Right. Since there's so many. It's really hard to say, because it's funny, because depending on what this stable or gathering place sells, it almost seems to make Beedle redundant, or Beedle makes it redundant. So how do they work within each other? That's the big question here.
I mean, that is a question. I mean, and that's assuming it's a bazaar. It may not be. This could just be a gathering place, in which this actually makes more sense. Because if it is like a place where you actually can buy things from, or buy typical items from, rather, that does seem to be redundant almost with Beedle here, unless Beedle's just coming by to restock his shop at this place. But again, this doesn't look like a typical item shop, though. This seems to be more horse focused. So I'm kind of hoping, I do hope he is just a traveling merchant. What I think would be really cool is if you can just come across him at random points. Like maybe you can hear him at a distance. Maybe he sings a song or something, and you then can go approach him and pick up stuff while you're wandering around. But then, is there only one Beedle? Are there multiple Beedles? You mentioned Beedle brothers. That would make sense, but it wouldn't make sense for there to just be one traveling Beedle in this entire freaking world.
Yeah, I mean, they have a Beedle backpack with a very distinct design. Wouldn't it be funny if the other Beedle brothers had different Beedle designs for their backpack?
Yeah, that would make sense. Although I guess, in Wind Waker, Beedle did kind of just follow you around like a creepy stalker, right? Island to island. Maybe he does the same thing here too. That
could be. I mean, he just has that same sort of thing. Just rather than the boat, he just shows up here and there, and I mean, that could totally work. That's the thing. Like, none of these options seem that far out of the possibility to me. Like, Beedle just sort of fits right into them, no problem. I feel like Beedle just has maybe different supplies than this horse shop does. I don't know whether the horse shop will have like food or specific feed, or maybe it's just the stuff that you need in order to calm horses, in order to...
Yeah, it could be horse gear. Like, we've seen Epona, she's equipped with gear in the trailers, whereas the wild horses that we've seen Link find so far haven't been, which makes sense, being wild horses. So maybe this is how you outfit them. Maybe you go here, you buy equipment for your horse, like saddlebags and whatnot, and then you can, truly go out in the world.
Yeah, and maybe this is how you get better saddlebags and be able to hold more items, because obviously Link has a pretty sizable inventory already, but maybe it's connected to your horse, and if you have a bigger saddlebag on your horse, you can carry more items. Again, I am totally just spitballing at this point, trying to figure out what the heck it could be.
Yeah, there is something just about the idea of coming across merchants in the wild, or people in general. Like, I really hope there are travelers in this game, a lot of them that you can come across and either get information from or buy things from. It's an idea I threw out first in the Game Awards trailer. So, did we see that one guy crossing the bridge out in the field? Like, there's something about that that just really excites me. Like, seeing other people on their own personal, smaller quests, if you will. Yeah. They're going to go get milk, but whatever. That's
it's just a rough job. And wait, here comes the postman running by.
Oh God, yeah. One more thing though is in the Game Awards trailer, which again seemed to be from a different horse location, different horse-themed building, there was another merchant-looking guy there, similar to Beedle here, except that guy seemed to be a painter. Like, we saw paintbrushes on him. So, it seems like these structures maybe just, like, appeal to maybe different types of people, or different types of merchants even. Or maybe they're all interchangeable and they could all be found at different locations. I mean, I don't know. There's so many ways this can go.
Yeah, I mean, it really could be like, I put forth the idea that this painter guy was a map maker, or something like that. But again, we also talked about how there's the redundancy of the Sheikah slate. Why do you need a map if the Sheikah slate has all that stuff for you right off the bat? So what does this guy do? And I mean, you could be right. It could just be different. Like when you show up here, different merchants will be available with different items to sell, or they could be designated to one in particular. It's really hard to say. I'm not even sure how to wrap my head around it fully, honestly.
Yeah, these screenshots really just raise more questions than answers oftentimes. But hey, that's the fun of it. Now, there's one more thing I want to point out real quick, because a few people in the comments noted that there appears to be like almost what looks to be a cave in the background there, right behind Beedle. Do you see it? Like, it's hard to see, but in the mountain, there's like
I can vaguely see it.
Right. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's our first cave, not actual thing, but I would get a kick if there's a cave back there, or there's caves that you can blow open, and there'll be moblins sitting around giving you rupees. It's a secret to everybody.
Oh,
Actually,
man, yeah.
Do the full callback, not just the line. It's a secret to everybody. Have a dang moblin there.
That would be pretty cool. It would be neat if they did have the defecting moblins again for whatever reason.
It'd be weird, but I'd love it.
Oh, how awesome would it be if they went like just full Metal Gear Solid almost, and when you enter the cave, it goes into full retro 8-bit graphics.
Oh, God. Nah, see, I want to see it updated, see what it looks like.
Oh, man, I don't know. I think it'd be almost cooler for it to go old school for no reason at all. For it to be just completely immersion breaking and just go full all in on like the whole timeline merging thing, too.
No, go break in and have like the old man who gives you tips in the dungeon, attack him, so then all of a sudden the fire starts shooting at you.
Right.
Have that in 3D.
I guess actually, speaking real quick of the timeline, do you think, getting back to Beedle actually and his placement in the more cartoony games, those are all along the Wind Waker timeline, with the exception of Skyward Sword, except that also fits in because that's before the path branches. So do you think Beedle might have any kind of impact on where in the timeline this takes place?
No. I honestly don't.
Yeah, I don't either.
Because, I mean, he was in the Minish Cap, which also took place before the split, but, I mean, and generally Beedle has showed up in the Wind Waker timeline, but that means nothing to me. I mean, they could pop him anywhere. So, I mean, the timeline is still totally up in the air. Honestly, do you think they might reveal the timeline placement during this event?
No.
Do you think they'll go that in depth?
No,
or
not a chance.
When do you think they'll announce that? Or do you think they'll actually?
They'll never announce it. It'll be something in the game, but they will never there'll be no announcement before the game comes out. After the game comes out, maybe in interviews or more Hyrule Historia type stuff, we'll get more information from. But I think everything, our immediate answers to that question are going to be in the game itself.
Yeah, so that'll be a fun mystery to solve. Trying to figure out how to
define fun.
Well, it's fun for me. It sucks for you.
Yep. All right. I think we've exhausted this pretty well. Derek, any final thoughts at all about either of the images?
No. I mean, just generally, these are some fun images for two completely different reasons.
Yeah. I love the initial artwork. Like that again is just so inspiring. I love that sight, that thought. It's like this is like the Zelda game I've wanted to play forever. And that's saying something. I want to play, several of the Zelda games a lot. But like this is the one that seems to be really capturing that true open-ended sense of adventure. Again, the most since the original Legend of Zelda, which I'm playing right now. So it's a really perfect timing. And then the second picture is just really interesting in all the questions it raises. Just with what exactly are these buildings and Beedle's role in them or in this world. And just one final thought too. Like there's a lot going on around this building. Like we can see like a lot of junk on the right too, right beside the horse stable. Like there's just a lot going on. So I just need to know more.
Yeah, it makes it all that junk on the side makes it seem that it might be more permanent than temporary. Because you have all this junk, but also I mean it could be just screw it, just throw it all out. We'll just pack it up as we go along.
Yep.
But this, I mean, the whole horse head at the top, this has to be kind of permanent.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, I think that wraps up for this week. So we'll be back maybe next week. I mean, we'll definitely be back next week. Just not sure we'll be discussing the pictures next week. But yeah, exciting times ahead. Switch is coming up. We'll have tons more on Zelda soon. So thanks for watching. Of course, stay tuned to Game Explained for more discussions on Zelda Breath of the Wild and the Switch and everything else as well. Catch you later. Bye.